Hello there, and welcome back to some more Gran Turismo 5. Today we'll continue on Let's Play. This is episode 17. In today's episode, we are taking a look at the AMG Driving Academy, our first look at it. So of course we're doing the beginner stage, because it's our first time there. What is the AMG Driving Academy? Well, essentially, it's learn the Nurburg ring. Several times over. My least favourite track in racing games. Over and over and over again in Mercedes cars. Great. Anyways, so essentially the way they do this is you drive 4 sectors of the track, you learn the track that way in the specific car and in the conditions, and then once you've completed all 4 sectors, you can drive a full lap of the Nürburgring. Now, this isn't quite as painful for me as you might think, because while I do hate the Nürburgring, there are several interesting quirks when it comes to the AMG Driving Academy. For one, corner cutting isn't disqualification. You can cut the track as much as you want, you can drive on the dirt as much as you want, and you won't get disqualified, which means I will be using a few cheeky corner cuts during my time doing this. So that's good. Unfortunately, the caveat to that is track knowledge is probably required for gold. I've driven the Nürburgring so many times in racing games now, so even though I don't like it and I do get lost on here, I have a relatively good understanding of this track sector by sector. For example, Sector 1 here is very easy for me because I have a ridiculous amount of experience with this. I believe it was one of the Gran Turismo 6 special events that involved the Nissan GTR around the first sector, and I struggled with it for hours and hours and hours on end, to the point where this first sector of the Nürburgring I know incredibly well, which is why I do really well on it, and I don't need to do a corner cut, although in later variants of the AMG Driving Academy I might end up using it because it's a little bit easier to cut corners when driving in the wet. Anyways, another caveat for this as well is I turned the traction control off because it makes things easier for me. As you can see, I actually dip a wheel on the dirt here, which is interesting, and yet still get the gold time. As I said, I know this part of the Nürburgring quite well. 666, good, we're already summoning Satan. Hopefully he can end this torture quicker. The one nice thing about the AMG Driving Academy is it does pay well, 35 grand there, and of course that only grows over time, 4,000 XP as well, which means we should be pretty quickly leveling up throughout our time with this. Anyways, after Sector 1 comes Sector 2, as you might expect, and this is the north part of the track, essentially. So Sector 1 is the west, Sector 2 is the north, Sector 3 is sort of northeast, and then Sector 4 is where it all comes back round again to the start-finish straight. This is, I think, the longest section on the track. Well, this and Sector 4 are the longest. Sector 2, though, has a pretty bloody big cut, which you're about to see, which you can take advantage of, and there's actually numerous different ways to do this. So it's actually off this corner, simply brake into here, you can cut straight across the track there, although this time around, as you can see, I stuck to the tarmac and then went off here, because with this being a slower car, you can't carry quite as much speed through that section. So yeah, because you can drive over that, you can cut a good, best case scenario, you're cutting 3, 4, 5 seconds out of a lap time using that. That's also what you can use to make Mission 34 easier in Gran Turismo 4 if you struggle with that. But yeah, just remember at Adnau Forst, I believe is the name of the corner, I'm probably butchering that. Yeah, you can just do a really nice big cut through there. But yeah, I've turned traction control off because it makes things easier, especially with the 300 SL, because it does like to roll around a lot on the suspension. So you're often going to break a tyre out of traction, and it's not really a big deal because it's only got 224 horsepower. Did manage to rub on the dirt here, which was wonderful. But yeah, because of that, it's not really too much of a big deal to spin a wheel, so just turn traction control off because it makes life easier. When we got onto the wet variations of this, because, spoiler alert, you do eventually have to drive this in the wet as well, I might end up re-enabling that. I actually don't remember what I did for that. I pre-recorded all of this, just for the record, like, as I'm recording this, and indeed, as I was recording even License B, I think every single special event in the game was already done. So, I know how this happens, and this game's been out for, well, 11 years, I think, at this point, almost 12 years, towards the end of this year. So, I mean, if you don't know what goes on with these special events already, then whose fault's that? But yeah, as you can see, Section 2, I did that big cut. I drove a bit naff, ended up going on the grass over that one bit, and yet still managed to somehow pull the gold time out of my arse. In fairness, if I wasn't able to do that cut, I'd probably have to settle for silver, like in the license tests. But fortunately, I can do that cut, which is good. So yeah, that means that I can get through that a lot easier. Hooray! Onwards then to what comes after Sector 2. Well, it's of course Sector number 3, which is arguably the hardest section of the track because it essentially delays the inevitable. The harder bit of Sector 3 is the final section, when you're sort of setting yourself up for that big twisty section on the east side of the course, which is the bit where I get really lost through. But of course you have to sit here and drive down this straight for ages and ages and ages before you can get there. So again, it's sort of delaying the inevitable. Essentially through this bit, you just want to keep your foot in it. The 300 SL isn't a particularly quick car. Don't get me wrong, when you're driving the higher powered stuff, which you're going to see later on, yeah, it is a little bit more difficult, but in the case of the 300 SL, just keep your foot in it. Maybe a little bit of a lift into that corner here, as you can see. I was sort of lifting just to avoid going on the dirt, but yeah, it's a pretty straightforward, easy one. Make sure to brake nice and early for this corner here. I'm not going to try and say the corner names anymore. I think I murdered Adnau Forst earlier. Anyway, this is the carousel, which I discussed in the previous license test episode. Probably my favourite corner on the track in this game, because the car will just essentially drive itself around it, and it is very nice. Coming up here, we do have a potential corner cut you can do over this hill, which is popping into view now. I don't think I do it on this one, but you can drive straight over that. That's only really going to save you a second at most, and that's if you pull it off perfectly, so it is a little bit of a risky cut to take, but it isn't too... I mean, it's there if you do want to take it. But through these corners, this is where I get lost. In fairness, I learnt a little bit from one of the GT4 license tests. I find Viperman is one of the hardest corners on the track, because there's just... the runoff there is just grass. Now, fortunately, coming up to this end part here, the actual finish line for this is really close to the exit of this corner, which essentially means you can just full-on send it through there. You'll actually see in later AMG Driving Academy episodes, I'll literally just turn that corner and just shoot it in a straight line, not even try and put any steering input in it, because steering input reduces speed. So you may as well just sort of send it over there and try and get to the line as quickly as possible. So... yeah, you'll see that coming up in a bit. Here you are getting a exclusive behind the scenes and how the thumbnails work for this. Not really, I just remembered to create a thumbnail for this, which, spoiler alert for most of this LP, I don't do because I'm an idiot and forget about stuff like that. Anyways, sector number 4. This is probably my weakest section, but it is made up for in the fact that there is a massive cut that you can go ahead and take on this one right at the end, which is nice. Although in these lower powered cars, it isn't as much as an advantage, although you do have a lot more control over it. Here is a cut you can take as well. Again, it's only really going to save you about half a second, but it is probably one of the easier corner cuts to pull off here. Just because the Nurburg ring is so hilly, it is kind of difficult to go ahead and pull off those particular corner cuts. So, yeah, again, there's not really too much to say on that one. But, yeah, this is sort of the part I most struggle with. It's just a lot of... Essentially, the end of Section 3 into this part of Section 4. This is just the part of the track where I just completely get lost on where I am. I know the back routes pretty well. I know the main straight pretty well, because it's a big straight. What the on earth is that corner name? I have no idea. But yeah, as I said, it's not too bad. So, yeah, again, there's not really too much to say about this, and I'm going to have to repeat this over and over again for the AMG Driving Academy, which I'm really looking forward to. This game just does a lot of padding, basically, it has to be said. There's just a lot of stuff which is just really avoidable, in my opinion. You know, I don't know why you have to drive the Nurburgring 4 separate times in, you know, different conditions and all that. Why, you know, instead of making me waste my time in the license test figuring out what way to take a specific corner of Rome, why not just put all the, you know, why not just give the Nurburgring some license tests? I don't know. Gran Turismo is always really happy with its Nurburgring licensing, which is weird considering this track can probably be licensed for about 5 pence. It is a public toll road, so you can probably just throw it in the game without rights anyway. So, as we're coming up to this final bit, this is the main cut you can take. Instead of taking all these little winding corners here, you can literally just full on send it around this bit. As you can see, I take this corner here. Usually I'd ramp off that hill right there. Although that is a little bit risky because you can bash straight into the final corner, or straight on into the final corner. As you can see, be a little bit cautious through the final corner, and there you go. That is the goal time for this one. Once again, if I couldn't cut the course, I'd be a little bit concerned in terms of times, but fortunately, whether it was intentional or not, you can cut the course as much as you want and get away with it scot-free, which is lovely. And of course, as I mentioned at the start of this, once you've done section 1, 2, 3 and 4, it's then time for your full course run, where you can put together all of the skills you've learned. Hooray, hurrah. As you can tell, I'm very, very infused about this. That was I'm not even gonna... Anyways, there's AI this time around, which is cool. So you can have those to slipstream and battle a little bit. The time limit is actually pretty generous for the full course run, which is really nice. I'm sure if you counted up all of the gold times together, I'm not sure what it'd come out to, but it would probably be a lot less than 849. So yeah, they do fortunately give you a pretty nice time limit for this. In fairness, the AI don't really get in your way. You can use them to lean on, which you will see me do through various points of this run. But yeah, overall the full course run, just a lot like the previous sectors. Just stick it all together, try not to cock it up, but do remember the time limit is pretty generous. Anyways, I'm not going to be able to speak through the entirety of this Nurburgring run because it's essentially telling you stuff that you heard earlier in the video. So I will leave you with my full run for now, and then I'll be back once this is over. that could have ended very wrong, but we did manage to get through that all in one piece, and eventually I end up beating this by over 6 seconds. So as I said, the time limit, fortunately for the full course run, is pretty generous, which is nice, because if it wasn't, I'd probably be clawing my eyes out right now, because I don't want to drive the Nurburgring for any more time than I have to. But yeah, I have no idea why AMG's so connected to this. Anyways, we've made a hell of a lot of money off this. By my reckoning, we've made over 170,000 credits over just doing the AMG Driving Academy. So while it is a pain in the arse to drive the Nürburgring over and over again, it is very much worth it for your pocket, because you do get an awful princely sum from it. But of course, that's just special events in general, as we've discussed before. Anyways, for completing this, you essentially just unlock some track layouts for arcade mode. That's all you get for goldening these. Don't worry, prize cars do come later, and a lot of photo locations as well, as you can see, which we won't be making use of. Anyways, that's it for this episode. Thank you all very much for watching. Next time we're going to be taking a look at the Gran Turismo Karting Experience Intermediate. So join us for that. Until then, farewell.
Yes, I will stay here for a while, for I need the break. A break from the brushes of life, and everything that lay in the past.